Hello YouTube! In this video I'm going to be sharing with you some arm wrestling secrets I've learned throughout my researches that are going to help you grow your forearms. I want to make clear right off the bat that these lifts, these techniques, are not necessarily going to make you a better arm wrestler. This is not my domain, I don't arm wrestle. What I did instead is I looked at the training of professional arm wrestlers and I selected all of the methods that I believe can be best utilized by bodybuilders to trigger hypertrophy and get bigger forearms. So it's exactly what we're going to do today. Before we get started, I suggest you check the description. I made a forearm tier list where I actually listed all of the best movements for forearms. All of the ones I'm going to present to you today are in the top tiers. And I also made a forearm master plan that is the theory on how to approach forearm training. But today it's a tutorial. We're going to be very practical. But before we begin, I want you guys to arm yourself with two pieces of equipment, a rope and a towel, because beyond dumbbell training, forearm training is best maximized with these two implements. So once you have grabbed your two best friends, we're going to move to your third best friend, the preacher station, and we're going to start with the first movement of this video, which is an hammer curl done preacher style. All right, so for the first exercise, we're going to use the rope or a towel, and we're going to set up using the preacher station for a simple reason. We want to stabilize the elbow joint and the shoulder joint so as to best recruit the forearm. When you position yourself, before you even get in position, you want to grab your rope. I recommend you grab in the middle, because if you grab too high, there's going to be too much play in the plate. And if you grab too close, you're going to be unable to move the wrist the way we want to move it. So grab it just inches away from the plate. Then you set up and you do a normal hammer curl. But we're going to focus on two key aspects of the lift here: the wrist and the range of motion. The range of motion, first and foremost, is going to be this. You're going to go down until the forearm is parallel with the floor, then we're going to go back up. You don't need to go deeper than that, because deeper would, in a sense, induce a tendency to rotate the shoulder inward, which we do not want. So this right here is going to be your striking range. Then the second key aspect is this right here. This is the proper way to do a hammer curl. I never want to see this, right? An unstacked wrist is a weak wrist that is going to lead to tendinitis, is going to lead to a poor recruitment of the forearm. You always want strong and stacked, okay? I personally consider that if this fails, then the lift fails. When you get started with this lift, you will find out that your wrist is actually quite weak. It will get stronger with time. You'll have better injury prevention and better recruitment of the forearm. This is also why I prefer the rope. The rope allows you to play with the wrist, whereas with the dumbbell, usually it's fixated in place. And we can do the exact same thing with a towel. So the towel is going to be the same thing exactly. We want to grab in the middle, we set ourselves in position, and from here, we go down with a strong wrist. And when we go back up, you can play with the angle and you can even tilt it inward if you like to feel the squeeze in the area of the brachioradialis, but that is entirely up to you. I recommend for this exercise in particular a rep range of 6 to 10. Why 6 to 10? Because as I said, you will see that the wrist is oftentimes the limiting factor and it gets spent fast. So if you constantly fail because of the joint, the muscle is not going to be recruited as much, which is why I prefer low rep range. So that is for the utilization of the towel and of the rope on this preacher station right there. But you can also use dumbbells. Arm wrestlers use dumbbells to a great extent to get massive forearms and biceps. So I'm going to now present you two other variations of the preacher curl this time that are going to be skewed towards forearm development. So the first dumbbell lift I want to present to you guys is the fat grip preacher curl that is going to greatly develop the inner portions of the forearms as well as the biceps, of course. What you want is to slap your fat grip onto your dumbbell and then to take what I call a cupping grip. So you're not going to close your hand all the way around the dumbbell with the thumb here. Instead, you're going to create a cup with your hand like this, all right, in this position here. And that's exactly what you're going to do to the dumbbell. You're going to cup it, all right? So I want every single finger on the same size on the same side, like this. Once you are cupped, I want a strong wrist. You're going to be here. You're never going to allow the wrist to break like this. You are in a constant wrist curl position. And once you have accomplished this wrist curl position, you get the setup that you want, still with the strong wrist, okay? It hasn't broken yet. And from here, we're going to replicate the exact same range of motion. I do not want this forearm to go deeper than this right there. And then we're going to go back up. The goal of the exercise is going to be to keep the wrist engaged and to maintain the cupping as much as possible. You'll notice that as you go down, the weight has a tendency to want to roll outside of your hand. When that happens, what you do is you're going to simply exaggerate the rotation. So if you look at my knuckles right here, as I go down, my hand rotates inward more so as to accommodate for the weight. And as it goes back up, you can see that it tilts backwards. Look at my knuckles, it's pointing forward, I'm rotating the wrist, and now I'm allowing the wrist to go back into position. So essentially your hand will be doing this. As you will go down, you'll have to exaggerate the wrist, and as you go up, you can allow the wrist position to return to neutral. And you will find that this will keep the entirety of the forearm engaged throughout the motion. For this lift and for the one that is going to follow, its twin, I recommend a rep range of 6 to 12. You want something that is going to allow you to use quote-unquote lightweight and a range wide enough so that you can actually keep grinding out reps, because you will find that you tire out extremely quickly on these movements. You might get 12 reps for set 1, then only 10 or 9 afterwards. If your rep range is too narrow, you're going to eventually run out of reps and you're going to have to cheat. So it's best to do something like 6 minimum and 12 maximum. So the second dumbbell lift I'm going to be presenting looks similar, but its nature is entirely different, because this time we're not going to use a fat grip. We want the hand to wrap around the bar with the thumb securing the grip. You'll see that this is very important. And we're going to get in position, but there's going to be a key difference in that once we're in position, we are not going to keep a frozen shoulder. For the previous movement with the fat grip, we did not want the shoulder to move. In this case, we will allow the shoulder to move by leaning forward with the dumbbell. So as you go down, you're going to allow the body to go down with the weight in this position here, and then you're going to return in position using the momentum of the body. I'm certain that if you follow arm wrestling, you have seen arm wrestlers do that. They usually do it with a completely static forearm and they just do this. So they lean with the entire body and there's no movement of the forearm or the bicep. They do it with a lot of weight. We don't want to do that because it's not the best for hypertrophy. We want both. So some lean forward so as to allow the forearm to get to parallel. Still, there's movement in the forearm and the elbow, and then we return back in position. You will find that this movement is also going to smoke the inner portion of the forearm, and it's also going to be great for the bicep. But always keep this in mind. The shoulder protrudes forward. I'm going to change hand so that it's even more evident for you. The shoulder protrudes forward because my torso leans forward. At no point is the shoulder joint moving. I am moving, therefore the shoulder is moving. Very important to avoid injuries. And another thing that is going to greatly help you recruit the forearm here is I want you, when you go down, to allow the weight to roll. So you're going to allow the wrist to tilt forward a bit so as to allow the weight to sit atop the knuckles and not deep inside the hand. That way, when you go back down, you can initiate a movement of the wrist. So you're going to do a wrist curl when you revert back into the positive, and you're going to feel it greatly in your forearm. We only ever break this strong wrist of ours if there is a benefit involved. In this case, quote unquote, more range of motion, and therefore also more activation. So that was that for these two dumbbell movements. And now we're going to move on to a lift that I christened the Hangman curl that we're going to do with a rope. So for this lift, you're going to need your rope and some plates. If you have a cable station, you can use the cable station as well. But for now, I'm going to demonstrate with a plate because it's all I have. So you're going to loop your rope around the plate, and you're going to position your hand right here, all right? So I don't want you to supinate the hand. This is not the point. I want a strong wrist in this position here. And the Hangman curl is extremely simple. You're going to allow, okay, the arm to lightly straighten, not all the way, don't exaggerate, with the shoulders tucked back. This is extremely important. And from here, this is the lift. Here and down. 3 keys to this exercise. The first one, and the one that I insist the most on, is the shoulder. I don't want to see this. All right? Don't be above the weight. Allow the weight to be in front of you, and don't move the shoulders. I rarely see this lift performed in gyms, but whenever I see it, I see guys who try to ego lift by moving their shoulders up and down. This is not a shrug, it's not an upright row, it's a curl. So shoulders back, down, and frozen throughout the movement, all right? The only thing that moves is the elbow joint so as to bring the weight up. Now, the second key is going to be, once again, your wrist. You don't want this. Never a weak wrist. Engaged, back, and tight throughout the motion. You can even exaggerate the flexion of the wrist at the top if you want to feel more forearms. That can actually help you, but only do so if it actually helps you feel the forearms more. Now, the third key, and the one I want you guys to also focus on, is the approach. This is a limited range of motion, okay? From here to here with your hands in this position, no supination, which will allow you to grind a ton. So if you think you can't go anymore, keep pulling upwards. You will find that this is sometimes a lift that is going to have some strong sticking points here, but you can keep grinding up, I guarantee you that. So it is for that very reason that I recommend that you do this lift in particular in the 6 to 12 rep range. You want to go high, you really want to push your limits. This is super safe because the bicep is not in a supinated position, so there is absolutely no risk of a tear. If anything, at some point, your wrist, if you have a weak wrist, will give, at which point you technically fail the lift, you move on, and you start again another day. And as I said, because it's technically with a rope, you can do it with free weights, but it also works beautifully with a cable station. It might actually be better because the tension throughout the movement is more constant. So if you have plates, do it like this. If you have a cable station, absolutely try it. I think that we need to bring back the Hangman curl because it is a great variation, not only for the bicep, but also for the entirety of the brachioradialis that tends to be underdeveloped in people because everyone does supinated curl, but curls with that neutral engaged grip are rarer and I rarely see people actually do them. But there is even better than this. This is great for the entirety of the arm, but we can actually isolate this portion right here of the forearm even more efficiently if we use another arm wrestling technique I'm going to be presenting to you right now. All right, so for this next movement, you're going to need a loop. This is what I call a loop. Usually people use this for tricep training. They're horrible for tricep, but they can best be used for forearm development and for bicep development. Usually arm wrestlers will use a belt. You can also use a martial arts belt if you want. The goal is simple. You want something you're going to be able to wrap around your hand without having to hold it. So you're going to use the loop and you're going to use it in this position here. You're going to place it here, not on your knuckles, not on your fingers, deep inside the hand. You don't want the thumb inside, okay? You're not dumb. I want it to sit atop the hand as close to the wrist as possible. This is the way this lift is going to go. Then you're going to grab a plate. And once you have your plate, you're simply going to loop the loop through the hole of the plate. And once it is secured, you have your 2 bands right there. You're going to do exactly what I just showed. So you're going to place both ends of the loop on top of the hand, all right, so that it sits right there. And in this position, we're going to do a pronation, a simple pronation. So you're going to rotate your wrist inward. And that's the lift. It's as simple as this. But I promise you guys that if you get stronger, your entire brachioradialis is going to blow the fuck up. Your pronators are going to blow the fuck up. This is a lift I discovered recently and I've fallen in love with it. Now, what I also recommend, a third key, is to not be shy when it comes to playing with the angles and playing with the weights. You will see arm wrestlers do them like this, all right? So they'll have a much closer elbow to the body, right? And they'll do it like you would an hammer curl, but they'll focus on the inside rotation. So you see my hand here. At the end of the movement, I allow the wrist to come inward, and as it goes down, I keep it open, an open hand, so as to fill the entirety of the forearms and the arm. This, just right now, look at my arm. Do you see that fucking pump? This is baby weight. I usually use much more than this. You will be able to use much more than this. But the reason why I love this lift so much and why you will love it as well is because it is so adaptable. So you can do it like this if you want more brachioradialis. If you want something that is going to be stricter, you can keep the elbow stationary and just allow for the rotation, right? So it's the difference between this and this. But both of them are going to make you feel the entirety of the forearm, and it's going to greatly help with hypertrophy. This is a lift I never see in gyms, but I can promise you a thing. If we all start to implement this, huge forearms are going to become a reality real soon for anyone. No excuse. I have baby wrist. Look at the size of my wrist compared to the forearm. If we train them efficiently with the methods that we can learn from the people who have monster forearms, we are going to also be able to blow our forearms up. So that was that for this pronator twist. Now we're going to move on to the last lift on the list, which is going to be something for people who are in love with compound movements, because so far I only show isolation. Now we're going to move to a lift that is greatly loved, the pull-up, that we're going to skew towards forearm development. Oh, and before I forget, this movement right here is best done with a 10 to 15, 15 to 18, 20 rep range. We don't want to go super crazy with heavy weight. Arm wrestlers do that, it's great for them. For us, for hypertrophy, we want to actually be able to rep that weight. So if you want to make your pull-ups more focused towards the forearm, we're going to use the same methods that we've used throughout this video. We're going to use towels, not ropes this time, towels. And what we will try to replicate is, we will try to replicate a motion of the forearm that is going to best stimulate the brachioradialis. So how do we do that? First and foremost, we grab high. All right, we do not want to grab low so as not to create a swing. The closer you are to the rack, the less instability. But same lesson here, if you grab too close, you won't be able to have a free play of the wrist. So around here is usually good. Now that you've grabbed, you're going to want to engage the wrist before we start. So before you actually start your pull-ups, stack wrist strong with your head wrapped around. It's going to be a neutral pull-up, okay? So you want them close. We don't want a wide grip. We want a close grip right here so as to be able to tuck the elbows in. And we're going to take our neutral grip. So I'm going to show you a few, then I'm going to explain to you the way you're supposed to go about it. So as you can see, explosive on the way up, slow on the way down. The goal is as you go up to twist the wrist inside. So you go down, you'll see that your wrists are naturally going to go back to a neutral position. Then you'll explode back up, all right? Here, neutral position, down, the wrist opens up. And as I go up, I twist inside, all right? This is the goal, so as to recruit more forearms. As you can see, I personally go all the way down. If you want to really focus on the forearm, you can do half reps. So we can stay right here. That's your striking zone, okay? The goal is to open the elbow enough to recruit the forearm, then close it immediately again. We do this, essentially. Because anytime you go deeper than this, you recruit the back. If you want the whole package, the whole development, do it all the way down. If you want more forearm development, do it with a partial range of motion. What makes or breaks this lift is your ability to squeeze the towel. If you've never used towels before, you will find yourself very weak. sooner or later, the fingers are going to open up. This is because your fingers are undertrained and not conditioned. Don't worry about it, they will eventually be. But it's also a mental game. It's really painful to close your hands on a towel. So if you let the pain get to you, you'll open your hands. My advice is this: squeeze like your life depends on it, and you'll find that you're going to get more reps almost magically. This advice I give you is extremely important because if you don't apply it to the next lift, you might get hurt. So, caution, viewer advised, the next lift is for people who have strong wrists and who have more experience in forearm development. So for this next and final lift, we're going to use fat grips. And what I'm going to present to you right now is my current favorite type of pull-ups for both forearms and back. It's going to be a neutral pull-up as well, so your hands are going to be like this, but this time we won't actually grab onto the implement. Instead, we will cup. Remember the cup that I told you about at the start of the video? We're doing that again, but this time instead of being underneath the weight, we'll be above the weight. So we're not grabbing the fat grips, we're cupping around them. Your goal is to have the entirety of the hand above the fat grip, like this. I don't know if you can see my hand. I will actually try to zoom in, but my hand is not here. Okay, it's not grabbing, it's atop. It's on top of the rack. And once I'm on top, I'm going to flex the entirety of the forearms to be in this position right there, all right? So both hands above in a cup position, and from there, I'm going to do my pull-ups. The reason why I said that this is quote-unquote dangerous is that you will find that the first time you do this, your wrists are not going to be happy with you and your forearms are going to be screaming in agony because it's a hard position to hold. But if you can hold it, not only is it going to develop the forearm, it's also going to give you a sensation for the back that I've never felt before with any other type of pull-up, because even with a neutral grip pull-up, you're still technically underneath the bar. Whereas if you can cup, it replicates the feeling you would get from a close grip lat pull down done with a mag handle. So let me show you how it's done. I position myself, I cup. Once I'm cupped above the fat grips, I engage the forearms, so I tuck them in, they're strong, and from here, I actually touch my chest to the bar, okay? This lift, you'll find, is usually going to be limited by your forearm strength. I think that if you can get to a point where it's not the case anymore, and you can actually allow the back to fall first, you can claim to have pretty strong wrist / pretty strong forearms. But if you're the type that loves pull-ups and is already advanced on them, give this one a try, and I certify that you will fall in love with it as well. For this one, I recommend a rep range of 6 to 10. The goal is actually to weight them if you can. You don't want to be holding onto towels or to actually cup for 15 reps. It would be ridiculous. I would even go as far as to say that maybe 4 reps, 4 to 6 or 4 to 8, could actually be beneficial for hypertrophy. And that is going to conclude this video. So I hope this was useful. I hope the tutorials were clear. If you have more questions, certain lifts you don't quite understand, let me know. I would be happy to help you in the comments. And I really encourage you guys to start including more forearm isolation into your regimen if you want to develop these strong, meaty forearms. I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.